Assignment 1, Pacific Language Context. Stacey King, student number 19041063. Tuamotu Province is the easternmost part of the Solomon Islands, with Nendo positioned 380 kilometers east of the main Solomon Islands. Nendo also has two small islands that lie 1 kilometer on either side. Malo is situated to the northwest, also known as Tuamotu Neo, and Nibanga sits to the southeast, also known as Tuamotu Noi. Vanuatu is located about 270 kilometers to the south of Nendo, with the island of Utupua sits about 70 kilometers to the southeast, and the island of Vanikoro sitting about 125 kilometers further south of Nendo. Lata, Nendo's capital, is located in the northwest along with Luova Airport, situated in Graciosa Bay. The landscape of the language locale of the island of Nendo. Nendo is the largest of the surrounding islands in the Tuamotu province and is classified as a volcanic high island, meaning that it is derived from volcanic origins due to its location in the Pacific Ring of Fire. Its highest mountainous point is 550 meters above sea level, and the island size is approximately 506 kilometers squared. Nendo is a mountainous volcanic landmass covered in lush rainforest and surrounded by low-lying atolls. It is subject to a typically wet climate, which can be vulnerable to earthquakes and tsunamis and rising sea levels associated with global warming. Natügu is primarily spoken in the northern part of Nendo. Linguistic relationships. Within the Natügu area on Graciosa Bay, there are 15 villages having 4 dialects of Natügu. In addition to the geographical variation within Natügu, there is also variation within each geographical dialect as a result of age. The island of Nendo is also home to 3 additional language groups: Nalogo, Nugu, and sometimes referred to as Ngdewu, and Aiwu. Despite the shared topographical environment, the language groups of Nendo have distinct socio-cultural and linguistic differences. As mentioned above, Natügu is spoken on the northern part of Santa Cruz Islands, primarily Graciosa Bay, while Nalogo is spoken in the south and southwestern areas. The Natügu language belongs to the Reef Santa Cruz language family, or RSC. It has been identified as an aberrant oceanic language of the Tuamotu subgroup of Proto-Oceanic, which is a part of the Oceanic branch of the Austronesian language family. Natügu's linguistic neighbors lie within the other Tuamotu subgroups branches and consist of 6 languages of Utupua and Vanikoro. The archaeological excavations from Lapita sites on both the Reef Islands and on Santa Cruz Islands have established that Utupua and Vanikoro languages arrived well over 3,000 years ago. Along with Lapita archaeological remnants, there is evidence to suggest the islands had been inhabited by indigenous Melanesian local people from 5,000 years. First recorded European contact was with Spanish adventurers on September 7th, 1595, who found the island already inhabited by the locals and named it Santa Cruz. The contact was short-lived, and after a month the Spanish left due to the death of their captain. In the mid-1800s, missionaries began visiting the Solomon Islands around the same time that blackbirding became common in the Pacific, where local men were often kidnapped by European ships and forced into labor on sugar plantations in Queensland and Fiji. The evils associated with the labor trade prompted the United Kingdom to declare a protectorate over the Solomon Islands. Nendo, an island of the Solomon Islands, is a sovereign nation, previously an English protectorate that achieved its independence from the British Crown and became a member of the Commonwealth, July 7, 1978. English is the Solomon Islands' official national language due to its history as a former British protectorate, which was solidified by the establishment of a Western English school system. Solomon Islands Pidgin developed when the indigenous languages came into contact with English. Pidgin has now become the language of wider communication in the nation. English is used for reading and writing, and Pidgin used for speaking in the context of education, business, church, and government. Natügu is the most common indigenous language on the island of Nendo, with approximately 5,000 speakers. Ngdewu is least common with around 200 speakers, also known as Nagu. Iwu has approximately 8,000 speakers, although they're mainly spoken on the Reef Islands, 50 kilometers north of Nendo. Nalogo is spoken as a first language by about 1,500 people. And traditionally, pre-colonization, when marriages occurred between different language groups, the foreign language-speaking wives would learn the language of their husbands, and their children would have learnt the language of both of their parents. Today, these patterns have changed due to the common use of Pidgin. Therefore, many children grow up learning Pidgin as their first language in their homes, as cross-cultural parents will use Pidgin to communicate with each other as well. The expanded, graded, intergenerational disruption scale is a tool for assessing the vitality of languages. The most difficult EGIDS diagnostic question to answer is, are all parents transmitting the language to their children? Because the Natügu language status is in transition. Therefore, Natügu is categorized as a 5 on the EGIDS scale, with conflicting factors, possibly pushing it to a 4 or a 6 in the future. There is a distinctive difference between the situation in the home area of the language, that is the urban area of Honiara, and distinct social networks. It's still the norm for the children on Santa Cruz to learn Natügu in the home and use it in their interactions with each other. In the national capital of Honiara, children commonly may not learn to speak either of their parents' languages, as Pidgin becomes the default language. Pidgin is the language of wider communication, and all Natügu speaking children have regular exposure to English and Pidgin at school, with English textbooks and spoken Pidgin lectures. It appears that the younger speakers, whose acquisition is put on hold during the schooling years due to separation from parents for most of the schooling, they never reach the same level of vocabulary and syntactic complexity as the next older generation. In this sense, Pidgin is displacing vernacular. The presence or absence of prenasalization distinguishes the 3 age registers. The oldest speaking always prenasalize, the middle-aged speakers usually prenasalize, and the youngest speakers do not routinely prenasalize. The Natügu Language Project, NLP, provided beginning literacy materials to all primary schools on Santa Cruz, in which Natügu was the main language of the students. The NLP sent literacy teachers around the island to hold 1- and 2-week transition literacy workshops for those already literate in English to help them move towards reading and writing in Natügu. In the Natügu-speaking areas of Nendo, Natügu, English, and Pidgin are the languages in active use. Most of the population can understand and speak Natügu. An increasing number can also read it, but only a handful are proficient at writing it. Recently, Natügu has replaced English as the primary language of the Church of Melanesia on Nendo, with announcements, prayer, and song in Natügu. There is institutional transmission in some schools dependent on the principal's preference, as teaching Natügu is not an official educational policy. However, the Solomon Islands Ministry of Education has mentioned its desire to implement Natügu literacy into the early grades curriculum, so it may become official policy at some stage. The pronominal system of Natügu is slightly unusual, as it has a 4-person minimum augmented number system. Minimal augmented systems comprise of a mixture of first and second person plus a group to which the speaker and addressee belong. The third person augmented prefix in Natügu is ne. A verb that has this prefix yet lacks indicators for either third-person augmented or nominalization, signals the Natügu passive construction. This is interesting because it shows the likelihood of a Proto-Oceanic passive, because Natügu's marking of passivization also appears in the Western Oceanic language of Bola, marked by ni. Bola and Natügu are from two separate primary branches of Oceanic language, thus Vandenberg and Bogar, 2011, argue for the existence of a passive morpheme for Proto-Oceanic, suggesting that both morphemes, Bola's ni and Natügu's net, are direct reflexes of Proto-Malayo-Polynesian.